Welcome to this video that belongs to Lesson 2 of Module 3. My name is Mari Carmen Suárez de Figueroa Baonza, and the aim of this video is to present in detail the scenarios of the NEOM methodology. As explained in Lesson 1, the NEOM methodology is based on scenarios. This methodology is not based on a rigid workflow. That is, it suggests different ways for a variety of situations when developing ontologies. Summarizing, the NEOM methodology provides a set of 9 scenarios, a glossary of processes and activities involved in the development of ontologies, a collection of life cycle models, and a set of methodological guidelines for different processes and activities. These methodological guidelines include functional, procedural, and empirical knowledge. Here you can see the set of 9 most plausible scenarios for building ontologies. These scenarios are proposed in the NEOM methodology. Each scenario is decomposed into different processes or activities. These processes and activities are defined in the NEOM glossary presented in Lesson 1. Now, we are going to explain in detail these scenarios. Scenario 1, also called from specification to implementation, is used when the ontology is developed from scratch, that is, without reusing knowledge resources. This scenario involves the ontology requirement specification, as well as the ontology conceptualization and implementation. In scenario 2, ontology developers should carry out the non-ontological resource reuse process for deciding, according to their requirements, which resources can be reused to build the ontology. Then, the selected non-ontological resources should be transformed into ontologies. Scenario 3, also called reusing ontological resources, refers to use ontological resources in the development of the ontology. These resources can include ontologies as a whole, ontology modules, or ontology statements. In scenario 4, ontology developers reuse and re-engineering ontological resources, while in scenario 5, ontology developers reuse and merging ontological resources. This scenario unfolds only in those cases where several ontological resources in the same domain are selected for reuse, and when ontology developers wish to create a new ontological resource from 2 or more ontological resources. In scenario 6, ontology developers reuse, merge, and re-engineering ontological resources during the ontology building. This scenario is similar to scenario 5. However, here developers decide not to use the set of merged resources as it is, but to transform it. Scenario 7 is for reusing ontology design patterns. In this case, ontology developers access repositories to find patterns to be used in the solution of modeling problems. In scenario 8, ontology developers restructure ontological resources to be integrated in the ontology being built. This activity can be subdivided into modularizing, pruning, extending, and/or specializing knowledge. Scenario 9 is for localizing ontological resources. That is, ontology developers adapt an ontology to other languages and cultures. The result of this scenario is a multilingual ontology. There are also other activities called support activities, such as knowledge acquisition, documentation, evaluation, among others. These activities should be carried out in any scenario used for developing the ontology. Finally, it is worth mentioning that these scenarios can be combined in different and flexible ways, and that any combination of scenarios should include always scenario 1. These restrictions should be applied because scenario 1 is composed of the core activities that had to be performed in any ontology development. Indeed, the results of any other scenario should be integrated in the corresponding activity of scenario 1. Let us now suppose a situation in which it is necessary to develop an ontology in OWL. This ontology is in the pharmaceutical domain, and we should reuse XML standards and also classification schemes in various formats. The question would be, which scenarios of the NEOM methodology should be used? In this example, ontology developers should use scenario 2, because it is needed to reuse some non-ontological resources, in particular standards and classification schemes, and then such resources should be re-engineered to obtain the associated ontologies. In addition, as previously mentioned, scenario 1 should be performed. Now it is important to show an application of the NEOM methodology. The first steps consist on performing the ontology requirement specification activity, which is explained in Module 4. Once the requirements has been obtained, a quick set of knowledge resources that could be potentially reusable in the ontology development should be performed. With the information of such as quick search, ontology developers can plan the ontology building. Such a plan includes the scenarios of the NEOM methodology to be applied, as well as the processes and activities that must be performed. In the specific case of this sample, the planning indicates that the development should be done in 3 iterations, each of them including different scenarios. For example, iteration 1 needs to apply scenario 3 and scenario 7, both related to reuse ontological resources and patterns. Once all the iterations have been performed, the ontology is obtained. Let us now see a summary of what was presented in this video. We are going to continue, but we recommend that you stop and try to summarize what was seen in the video. The NEOM methodology provides a methodological framework based on 9 scenarios. The first one refers to build ontologies from specification to implementation. Scenario 2 involves the reuse and reengineering of non-ontological resources. From scenario 3 to scenario 7, the idea is to reuse any kind of ontological resource. Scenario 3 refers to reuse ontologies. In scenario 4, ontologies are reused and transformed. Scenario 5 involves the reuse and merging of ontologies, while in scenario 6, ontologies are reused, merged, and transformed. And scenario 7 refers to the idea of using ontology design patterns when building ontologies. Related to adjust final details in the development, the NEOM methodology proposes scenario 8 for restructuring ontologies and scenario 9 for including multilingual features. These scenarios can be combined in different ways. And it is important to mention that any combination of scenarios should include scenario 1, because this scenario is composed of the core activities that had to be performed in any ontology development. Finally, it is recommended to review the additional material available on the platform. Thank you very much for your attention.